The glass doors of Harper Financial's flagship branch in downtown Chicago parted smoothly at 9 a.m., admitting a crisp breeze and James Harper, a 48-year-old CEO whose quiet presence belied his authority. Sunlight streamed through floor to ceiling, windows casting golden reflections on polished tile floors. The bank hummed with efficiency. Tellers in tailored suits moved briskly. Clients waited in neat rows, and the soft chime of the service bell punctuated the air. Posters touted trust in every transaction, a mantra James had crafted when he founded the bank 2 decades ago. Today, he wasn't here as the CEO. No suit, no entourage, just a light blue button-down, khaki pants, and clean sneakers. He was a customer, seeking a routine $15,000 withdrawal, testing whether his bank truly lived up to its promise of fairness. James had built Harper Financial from nothing, a black man from a South Side neighborhood where banks once denied his family loans. Those rejections, laced with unspoken bias, fueled his mission, a bank where every customer was equal. But recent anonymous complaints, whispers of racial profiling at this very branch, had shaken him. Audits hadn't uncovered the truth, so James chose to see for himself. Blending into the morning crowd, his sharp eyes scanning for signs of failure. Near the teller counters, a middle-aged white man in a charcoal blazer stood, his transaction smooth as silk. The teller, a young woman with a bright smile, counted out $20,000 in crisp bills, handing them over without a question. The man pocketed the cash, nodded, and strolled toward the exit, untouched by scrutiny. James exhaled, his jaw tightening briefly before he steadied himself. He'd felt that disparity before, seen it in countless spaces, but he refused to let it fester in his bank. His expression neutral, he joined the short line, his driver's license ready. At the counter, Lauren Brooks, a blonde teller in a navy blazer, greeted him with a flat stare, her nameplate gleaming. No smile, no warmth, unlike the previous transaction. "Fill this out," she said, sliding a clipboard with a withdrawal slip across the counter, her tone mechanical. James studied her for a moment, sensing the shift. Procedures were standard, but her demeanor was off-cold, dismissive. He filled out the slip with precision, sliding it back with his ID, expecting routine verification. Lauren glanced at the day, amount $15,000, and pushed the form back without touching the ID. "We can't process this," she said curtly, folding her arms. James frowned, his fingers brushing the rejected slip. "Excuse me?" Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes avoiding his. "We don't handle large cash withdrawals like this," she said, her voice clipped. James leaned slightly forward, his tone calm but firm. "I just saw that man walk out with $20,000. No hesitation. What's the difference?" Lauren's gaze flickered, not to him, but to a glass-walled office at the back, where Catherine Wells, the manager, stood, arms crossed, watching with a calculated stare. Their eyes met briefly, and Catherine gave a subtle nod, a silent signal. That bolstered Lauren's resolve. James followed Lauren's glance, his chest tightening. He knew that look, that nod, a choreography of bias he'd faced too often. Lauren turned back, her tone colder. "It's different," she said, offering. No explanation, her fingers tapping the counter in a slow, deliberate rhythm. James's voice remained even. "How exactly?" Lauren hesitated, her eyes darting back to Catherine, who remained still, her presence a quiet command. The air shifted, tension coiling as other tellers glanced over, customers like Margaret Evans, a white woman in her 50s, shifting uncomfortably near the service desk, her purse clutched tightly. Margaret's eyes met James's briefly, her lips parting as if to speak, but she looked away, her silence a familiar weight. James exhaled, his patience thinning but intact. He'd grown up navigating spaces that judged him before he spoke, taught by his mother to hold his dignity like armor. Those lessons anchored him now, keeping his anger at bay. "You didn't ask that man for extra verification," he said, his voice steady, pointing toward the exit. "So tell me, Lauren, why me?" Lauren bristled, her posture stiffening, but she didn't answer, her silence louder than words. James's heart thudded, not with anger, but with clarity. He reached into his pocket, slow and deliberate, pulling out his phone and tapping the record button, his movements calm but intentional. "You're refusing my withdrawal," he said, his voice clear, carrying across the counter, "despite my ID, my account information, and after processing a larger withdrawal for a white customer right before me." Lauren tensed, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't respond, her fingers pausing mid-tap. Catherine's gaze sharpened from her office, her stillness a warning, but James pressed on. "Explain the policy," he said, his tone firm, "or get someone who can." Lauren's face flushed, her voice sharp. "I don't make the rules," she snapped, her composure slipping. James's eyes didn't waver. "But you choose how." "To enforce them," he said, his words cutting through the lobby's hum. The air thickened, tellers glancing over, customers shifting uncomfortably. Across the lobby, Malik Thompson, a black security guard in his mid-30s, watched from near. The entrance, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp. James caught his gaze, sensing a flicker of recognition, not of his identity, but of the moment, the unspoken script they both knew. Lauren tapped her nails again, her voice sharp. "I need to get my manager," she said, turning abruptly toward Catherine's office. James didn't move, his fingers resting on the counter, his heart steady but burning. The bank's hum continued, but the air had thickened, a storm brewing beneath the golden light. Lauren turned abruptly, her heels clicking as she headed for Catherine's office, her chin lifted with the confidence of someone expecting backup. James stood firm, his phone still recording, his mind racing. The anonymous complaints about racial profiling, the viral social media post decrying Harper Financial's bias service depends on who you are flashed in his thoughts. The post, shared by a customer named Sarah, had gained traction overnight with comments like, "Shame on Harper," and "Same thing happened to me." The board had noticed, texting James, "Address this now." He'd come to test the truth, and Lauren's actions were proof. His bank was failing its promised DOD as Lauren entered the office. Catherine's expression remained unreadable, but her eyes flicked to James, assessing him like a problem to be managed. James's thoughts turned to his mother, her hands trembling as she faced bank tellers who dismissed her with smiles. "Hold your head high," she taught him, "but never let them define you." That lesson anchored him now, keeping his fury at bay. He glanced at Malik, whose subtle nod was a quiet allyship, a signal he'd seen this before. James's resolve hardened. He wasn't just fighting for himself, but for every customer wronged by this bank's bias. Margaret shifted again, her purse clutched tighter, her eyes meeting James's briefly before she looked away, her silence a mirror to countless others who'd witnessed injustice but stayed quiet. A teller nearby whispered to a colleague, their glances darting toward James, the tension palpable. Lauren emerged, Catherine trailing behind, her heels clicking sharply. Against the tiles, her presence a storm brewing. "Sir," Catherine said, her voice polished but cold, "we have protocols for large withdrawals." James's gaze was steel. "Then why weren't they applied to the last customer?" he asked, his tone measured but unyielding. Catherine's smile tightened, her gaze flicking to Ryan Mitchell, the white security guard near the entrance, whose broad frame straightened, hands loose but ready. The lobby hummed with unease, tellers avoiding James's eyes, customers like Margaret Evans clutching their purses, her fleeting glance betraying discomfort but no action. Malik Thompson, the black security guard, stood by the doors, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp, a silent witness to the unfolding injustice. James's heart thudded, not with fear, but with the weight of a truth he'd feared. His bank, built on fairness, was a stage for prejudice, and Catherine was its director. "You're refusing my transaction," James said, his phone capturing every word. "Despite my ID, my account details, and after processing a larger withdrawal for a white customer." Catherine's jaw tensed, her voice polished but sharp. "I can't discuss other transactions," she said, sidestepping his point. "We need to verify your fund's source." James exhaled, his patience thinning but intact, his mother's voice echoing. "Hold your head high. You have my account number," he said, his tone firm. "Look it up." Catherine's eyes narrowed, her smile condescending. "That's not how we do things here." A low, humorless laugh escaped James. "Interesting," he said, stepping closer to the counter. "I've banked here for years, never asked these questions. So tell me, Catherine, what about me makes this different?" The word different hung heavy, a blade slicing through the lobby's facade. Lauren stiffened behind Catherine, her smirk faltering. The air grew stifling, customers whispering, Margaret's grip tightening on her purse as she shifted, her silence deafening. Malik's gaze flickered, a shared recognition of the script they both knew too well. Catherine's lips curved, a glint of power in her eyes. "It's about security," she said, her tone dripping with false reason. "Large withdrawals raise concerns." James's voice sharpened. "Concerns you didn't have 10 minutes ago for a white man with more cash. That's not security, that's profiling." The word landed like a slap, the lobby inhaling as one. Catherine's composure flickered, her eyes darting to Ryan, who stepped forward, his boots echoing on the tiles, his neutral expression masking a readiness to escalate. "I'm asking you to cooperate," Catherine said, her voice polished. "Threat." James held his ground, his phone steady. "I'm giving you everything you need," he said, "and you're still refusing. That's not protocol." Catherine's hand lifted, a sharp gesture signaling Ryan. "Step outside, Ryan." Sod, his voice flat, his hand hovering near James's arm. James didn't flinch, his eyes locked on Catherine. "I'm a customer," he said, his voice clear, "and I'm not leaving until you do your job." Ryan's hand closed around James's forearm, firm and unyielding, yanking him back. James stumbled, his shoulder brushing Ryan's frame as the guard spun him toward the doors. A gasp broke the silence, a customer muttering, "That's not right." Margaret's eyes widened, but she stayed rooted, her silence a betrayal. Malik stepped forward, his movement subtle, his eyes on James, but he didn't intervene, not yet. Ryan shoved James again, harder, his back hitting the glass doors with a sharp jolt, the cold Chicago air rushing in as they swung open. The final insult came as Ryan tossed James's ID to the pavement, the plastic card clattering lifelessly at his feet. Something burned in James's chest, a raw fury he hadn't felt since his youth, facing bank tellers who dismissed his mother with smiles. He refused to bend, his expression unyielding as he stared at Ryan, who stood in the doorway, arms crossed, impassive. The lobby's hum faded, the golden light a cruel spotlight on James's humiliation. Then, a shadow moved. Malik Thompson crouched, his fingers closing around the ID with deliberate care, dusting it off before handing it to James. "This place," Malik muttered, just loud enough for James to hear. "Always does this." His voice carried years of quiet endurance, his eyes meeting James's with a shared weight. "Doesn't matter if you're qualified, if you play by their rules. They don't want us here." James took the ID, their fingers brushing briefly. A silent pact forming. James reached for his phone, his fury channeled into purpose. He dialed William Hayes, his chief operating officer, his voice low but firm. "I need you at the Chicago branch now." William's reply was immediate. 15 minutes. James ended the call, his fingers tightening around the ID, grounding him. Malik stood beside him, hands on hips, a humorless laugh escaping. "This is gonna get messy," he said, glancing at Ryan, still guarding the doors. The city pulsed around them, oblivious to the storm brewing. Inside, Catherine and Lauren resumed business, their confidence unshaken, unaware of the reckoning approaching. Margaret slipped away, her silence a choice. Sarah, a local reporter tipped off by the viral social media post, lingered across the street, her notebook open, sensing a story. James stood tall, the pavement cold beneath him, his resolve unbreakable. Harper Financial was his legacy, and he'd tear down its biases, starting with Catherine Wells, one calculated step at a time. The Chicago morning hung heavy outside Harper Financial's glass doors, the neon sign above casting a faint glow on the pavement where James Harper stood, his light blue button-down slightly rumpled from Ryan Mitchell's rough shove. His driver's license, dusted off by Malik Thompson, rested in his hand, its edges pressing into his palm, grounding him against the fury burning in his chest. Moments ago, Ryan had tossed it to the ground, a final insult after dragging James out for daring to demand his $15,000 withdrawal transaction a white customer had completed without question. Inside, Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks resumed business, their smug confidence unshaken, unaware that James, the bank's CEO, had called William Hayes, his chief operating officer, to deliver a reckoning. The city's pulse thrummed, but for James, time slowed, each second sharpening his resolve to dismantle the bias poisoning his legacy. Malik stood beside him, his broad frame tense, his eyes flicking between James and the bank's entrance, where Ryan loomed, arms crossed, a silent watchdog. "They always do this," Malik said, his voice low, raw with years of navigating spaces that dismissed him. "Degrees, suits, don't matter. You're just a number to them." James met his gaze, recognizing the shared weight of their experiences. "Not today," he said, his tone steady but fierce. "This ends now." Malik's lips twitched, a flicker of hope in his tired eyes. "You got a plan?" James nodded, slipping his phone from his pocket, the recording of Lauren and Catherine's refusal still active. "I've got evidence," he said, "and the truth." James's mind raced, piecing together his strategy. The anonymous complaints about racial profiling, the viral social media post Harper Financial favors some customers over others, had pushed the board to demand action, texting him, "Fix this or face a PR disaster." The post, amplified by a local reporter, Sarah, now had thousands of shares, comments raging. "Same thing happened to me," and "Boycott Harper." James had come to test the claims, and Catherine's nod, Lauren's dismissal, and Ryan's aggression were proof. He needed to expose them, but with precision evidence, witnesses, and a reveal that would force accountability without derailing the bank's future. He texted Margaret Evans, the customer who'd witnessed his humiliation, using the contact. She'd left after a prior visit. "Mrs. Evans, I'm addressing staff misconduct at Harper Financial. Can you confirm what you saw with the teller and manager today?" Margaret's reply was hesitant but clear. "I saw how they treated you. It wasn't." "Right, I'll help." Her testimony, though reluctant, was a cornerstone, amplifying the public weight of his case. James's fingers hovered over his phone, then texted his lawyer, "Prepare for potential litigation. Manager may push back." The reply was swift. "On it." "Gather all evidence." Malik shifted, his voice low. "Catherine's been at this for years," he said, glancing at the bank. "Covers up complaints, threatens anyone who speaks out. I've seen it. Black customers flagged, IDs lost, accounts frozen for no reason. James's jaw tightened, memories of his mother facing similar humiliations flooding back. "Why stay?" he asked, his tone gentle but probing. Malik exhaled, his eyes distant. "Bills to pay, kids to feed. But I'm done watching." James nodded, a silent pact forming. "You're with me then," he said. "When this breaks, I need you to back me up." Malik's nod was firm, his resolve a mirror to James's. Inside, Catherine stood behind Lauren, their heads bent in quiet conversation, their glances darting toward the doors. James caught a flicker of movement. Sarah, the reporter, across the street, her notebook open, her eyes sharp. Her presence, fueled by the social media storm, was a double-edged sword. Exposure could amplify justice or spiral into chaos. James texted Claire, his assistant, "Pull all complaints against Catherine Wells. Cross-check with employee Emma Johnson's file. She flagged bias before." Claire's reply was instant. Found 3 buried complaints. Emma was threatened with firing. Sending now. The email, detailing Catherine's cover-ups, was a ticking bomb. James's thoughts turned to his youth, standing beside his mother as bank tellers dismissed her with smiles, their eyes cold. "They'll test you," she'd said, "but you're stronger than their lies." That strength fueled him now, his plan crystallizing. Confront Catherine with William's arrival, reveal his identity, and demand reform. He texted William, "5 minutes out?" "Bring HR," William's reply. 3. Ready. The board's pressure loomed. Claire texting. Social. Media's exploding. Stocks dipping. You've got one shot. James's resolve hardened. He'd save his bank, not just for profit, but for principle. Malik glanced at Ryan, his voice low. "He's just following orders, but he knows it's wrong." James's eyes narrowed. "He'll answer for it." The lobby's golden light filtered through the glass, a cruel contrast to the injustice within. Margaret lingered inside, her purse clutched, her hesitation a reminder of the silence enabling Catherine's reign. Sarah's pen moved faster, her story taking shape. James stood tall, his ID in hand, his phone heavy with evidence. Catherine and Lauren thought they'd won, but they'd misjudged their target. The city's hum grew louder. A black car rounding the corner, William's arrival imminent. Malik's stance shifted, ready to follow James inside. The social media post, Claire's email, Margaret's testimony, they were weapons in a battle James was prepared to win. Harper Financial was his creation, forged to break the cycles of bias that had scarred his past. As the car pulled to the curb, James Harper took a breath, his fury channeled into purpose, ready to step back into his bank, not as a victim, but as the CEO who'd rewrite its story, one truth at a time. James Harper stood on the pavement, his light blue button-down creased from Ryan Mitchell's shove, his driver's license tossed to the ground and retrieved by Malik Thompson, clutched tightly, a symbol of the dignity he refused to surrender. Inside, Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks carried on, their smug confidence unshaken, unaware that James, the bank's CEO, had summoned William Hayes, his chief operating officer, to end their reign of bias. Malik stood beside him, his broad frame tense, his eyes sharp with hope and resolve. A black car screeched to the curb, William stepping out, his salt and pepper hair glinting, his sharp suit a stark contrast to James's understated attire. The lobby's golden light awaited, and James Harper was ready to reclaim his bank. William's eyes locked on James, his expression tightening with understanding. "Let's do this," he said, his voice clipped, authoritative. James nodded, his phone heavy with the recording of Catherine and Lauren's refusal, bolstered by Margaret Evans' testimony and Claire's email exposing Catherine's buried complaints. Sarah, the reporter, watched from across the street, her notebook open, sensing a story that could shake Chicago. James led the way, Malik trailing, Ryan straightening at the entrance, his neutral facade faltering as he recognized William's commanding presence. The glass doors parted, the lobby's hum faltering as eyes turned to the trio, the air thick with anticipation. Catherine stood behind Lauren at the teller counter, their heads bent in whispered collusion, their glances darting to the doors. Margaret lingered near the service desk, her purse clutched, her hesitation giving way to a nod as James passed. William's heels echoed on the tiles, his voice cutting through the silence. "Miss Wells," he said, his tone cold, "we have a problem." Catherine straightened, smoothing her blazer, her smile polished but strained. "Mr. Hayes, I wasn't expecting." William raised a hand, silencing her. "Clearly. Otherwise, my CEO wouldn't have been thrown out of his own bank." A dead silence gripped the lobby. Lauren paled, her hands trembling behind the counter. Catherine blinked, her composure cracking, her eyes darting to James, who stepped forward, his voice calm but resonant. "James Harper," he said, removing his cap, his presence shifting from unassuming to commanding. "Founder and CEO of Harper Financial." Gasps rippled through the room, tellers freezing mid-transaction, customers whispering. Ryan shifted uncomfortably by the doors, his authority crumbling. Margaret's eyes widened, her silence now a weight she couldn't ignore. Catherine's mouth opened, then closed, her icy confidence melting. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice thin. James's gaze was steel. "You didn't." "Check," he said, holding up his ID. "You refused my withdrawal, ignored my account, and had me removed because of how I looked. That's not protocol, that's profiling." Lauren's throat bobbed, her eyes darting to Catherine, seeking rescue. William's voice was lethal. "Did you verify his account?" he asked, his gaze pinning Catherine. She hesitated, a fatal pause. "No," she admitted, her voice barely audible. William turned to Lauren. "And you?" Lauren shook her head, mute. James stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You processed $20,000 for a white customer without question, but flagged me as suspicious. Explain." Lauren's lips parted, but no words came. William exhaled, his disgust palpable. "You're done," he said to Catherine, his tone final, effective immediately. Catherine went rigid, her face flushing. "This is outrageous." She snapped, her voice rising. "I'll sue for wrongful termination." James's smile was cold. "Try it. My recording, complaints, and witnesses say otherwise." William gestured to HR, who'd arrived with him, their folders thick with evidence Claire's email detailing. Catherine's cover-ups, Margaret's statement, and 3 buried complaints from Emma Johnson, a former teller silenced by threats. "Mandatory bias training for all staff," William ordered, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering on Ryan, including security. Ryan looked away, his complicity exposed. James turned to Malik, who stood firm, his eyes bright with vindication. "Malik Thompson," James said, his voice warm. "You're promoted to head of security, effective today." Malik's eyes widened, a mix of shock and gratitude washing over him. "Sir, James cut him off, his tone firm. "You've earned it." The lobby stirred, tellers murmuring, customers nodding approval. Sarah scribbled furiously, her article taking shape. Harper Financial CEO exposes bias, sparks reform. James approached the counter, his voice steady. "Process my withdrawal." Lauren, hand shaking, complied, counting out $15,000 in crisp bills, her eyes downcast. The cash, his by right, felt heavier than its weight, a symbol of justice reclaimed. James slid a stack to Malik. "Take the day," he said, his tone kind. Malik hesitated, then accepted, his fingers curling around the bills. Catherine was escorted out, her threats echoing, "You'll hear from my lawyer." But her power was gone. James met Margaret's gaze, her nod a quiet apology for her silence. William addressed the staff, his voice resolute. "This bank stands for trust. Today, we failed. Tomorrow we rebuild." Malik stepped forward, his new role a beacon of change. Sarah slipped away, her story ready to break. James stood tall, the golden light no longer a mockery but a promise. Harper Financial was his, and he'd ensure it never betrayed another soul. The Chicago midday sun filtered through Harper Financial's towering windows, casting golden beams across the polished tiles. The lobbies hummed softer now, tinged with a cautious hope. The buttery scent of coffee from a nearby kiosk mingled with the faint chime of the service bell, but the air carried a new weight, a reckoning sparked by James Harper's revelation as CEO. Hours ago, he'd exposed Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks' racial bias, leading to Catherine's dismissal, mandatory bias training, and Malik Thompson's promotion to head of security. James stood near the feedback board, his light blue button-down a quiet contrast to the CEO who'd reclaimed his bank. His sharp eyes followed Malik, now in a crisp new uniform, directing a security team with tentative confidence. Harper Financial was healing, and James was determined to make it a bastion of fairness. The confrontation had sent shockwaves through the bank. Catherine's exit, her threats of lawsuits echoing, had rattled the staff, but William Hayes' firm mandate reform or face consequences set a new tone. James and Claire, his assistant, had worked through the morning, drafting policies, enhanced bias training, anonymous reporting channels, and a diversity task force to audit customer treatment. The board, once panicked by a viral social media post decrying Harper's bias, now backed James, their texts shifting, stocks stabilizing. "Keep pushing." The lobby reflected the change-updated signage promising equity in every transaction, a suggestion box overflowing, and customers like Margaret Evans lingering, her earlier silence replaced by a nod of respect as she passed. James Malik approached, his tablet glowing with security protocols, his new role a mantle he wore with pride. "Teams briefed on the new cameras," he said, his voice steady but warm. "No blind spots." James smiled, pride swelling. "You're already raising the bar, Malik." Malik hesitated, then spoke, his tone raw. "Never thought I'd get a shot like this." "After years of being sidelined, it means something." James nodded, memories of his Southside Youth Bank tellers dismissing his mother's pleas grounding him. "You're not just security," he said. "You're leadership. I'm funding a management course for you. Start dreaming bigger." Malik's eyes widened, gratitude mingling with resolve. "I won't let you down," he said, his handshake firm at the teller counter. Lauren worked under supervision, her demeanor subdued, her bias training scheduled for tomorrow. Emma Johnson, a former teller silenced by Catherine's threats, had been reinstated, her smile bright as she served a customer. Margaret approached her, her voice soft. "You're doing wonderfully," she said, her earlier hesitation now a quiet immense. Emma nodded, her confidence a spark of the bank's renewal. Sarah's article, published online, had exploded. Harper Financial CEO goes undercover, ousts biased manager. Comments flooded in, finally, accountability. "And Harper's my bank now." Driving customers back, their transactions outpacing rival elite banks' faltering discounts. James joined a staff training session in a conference room. The first of many. Malik stood at the front, his voice steady as he shared his story. "I've been profiled here," he said, his eyes meeting the staff's. Customers flagged for no reason. IDs questioned, all because of how they looked. I stayed quiet too long, but no more. We're better than that. Tellers shifted, some tearfully, Lauren's gaze fixed on the floor. Emma spoke next, her voice firm. "I reported bias and got threatened. Now, I'm back, and we're changing this place together." Applause rippled, James nodding from the back. His vision taking root. Asterisk, the social media storm had shifted. Sarah's article drowning out Catherine's bitter posts, Harper's a sham, which gained little traction. A local activist at Daniel tweeted, Harper Financial fired a bigot, promoted a blackguard, and listened. This is leadership. Customers, like a man in a gray coat, who'd once complained about delays, tipped Emma generously. Feels different now, he said, his voice gruff but kind. But Catherine's threats lingered. Claire texting. Her lawyers making noise. Low chance of winning, but it's a distraction. James replied, let legal handle it. Focus on reform. He wouldn't let her shadow derail progress. James met Malik later, the lobby quieting as the rush eased. You're a natural, he said, gesturing to Malik's tablet. Malik smiled, his confidence growing. My kids saw the article, he said, his voice thick. They're proud. James's chest warmed, his mother's words echoing. Lift. Others as you rise. Keep them proud, he said. You're building their future. Malik nodded, his dreams management, maybe more no longer distant. Margaret lingered, her tea cold, her gaze on Emma. This place has a soul now. She told her, her words a quiet anchor. Outside, James stood under the neon sign, the city's lights twinkling. Sarah's article, Daniel's tweet, the training, they were proof justice rippled. Revenue climbed, elite banks' ads fading, their branches closing. Claire texted, social media's 80% positive. Customers sharing stories of fair treatment. Next, James's reply was simple. Task force rollout. No one gets left behind. The bank was his legacy, forged to break bias. And Malik, Emma, even Lawrence. Retraining were its heart. The lobby glowed, a testament to accountability. Catherine's defeat, Malik's rise, and the staff's awakening weren't perfect, but they were progress. James Harper had drawn a line, and Harper Financial would stand for trust, one transaction, one truth at a time. The Chicago evening draped Harper Financial's flagship branch in a warm amber glow, the neon sign casting soft light across the bustling sidewalk, its hum blending with the city's vibrant pulse. Inside, the lobby thrummed with a lively rush, the scent of fresh coffee from a kiosk mingling with the soft chime of the service bell and the murmur of customers. James Harper stood near the feedback board, his casual sweater a quiet contrast to the CEO who'd exposed Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks' racial bias, ousted Catherine, and promoted Malik Thompson to head of security. The bank sparkled, with renewal updated signage proclaiming fairness first, a suggestion box brimming with praise, and tellers moving with newfound purpose. James's sharp eyes followed Malik, now leading a security team with confidence, and Emma Johnson, the reinstated teller, serving customers with a bright smile. Harper Financial was no longer just a bank. It was a symbol of accountability, its story echoing far beyond Chicago. The transformation had ignited a firestorm of attention. Sarah's article, Harper Financial CEO goes undercover, exposes. Bias had gone viral, shared thousands of times with comments like, "This is leadership," and "Harper's my bank now." Social media buzzed, the original complaint post buried under support, amplified by Daniel, a local activist, whose tweet read, "Harper fired a bigot, uplifted its staff, and listened. Bravo, James Harper." Revenue soared, outpacing elite. Banks' desperate discounts, their ads, "Trust us, save more," fading against Harper's authenticity. Customers returned, drawn by the story and the improved service, their transactions steady. Margaret Evans sat at a corner table, her tea steaming, her gray hair catching the light, her earlier silence replaced by a warm nod as she watched Emma work. James's phone buzzed with a text from Claire, his assistant. "Channel 5 wants an interview." Boards thrilled with the numbers. "Your call." He hesitated, the spotlight a double-edged sword. The board, once rattled by the social media storm, now lauded his reforms, enhanced bias training, anonymous reporting, a diversity task force, but Catherine's lingering legal threats and elite banks' faltering competition kept James vigilant. A recent anonymous post, likely Catherine's, sneered, "Harper's a PR stunt. James is fooling you." It gained traction among a few disgruntled former staff, but the community's trust held firm, with customers like Margaret countering online, "I've seen the change. Harper delivers." James typed back to Claire, "Book the interview. Time." To set the record straight, at the teller counter, Emma served a family, her warmth genuine, her reinstatement a victory over Catherine's threats. A woman in a blue scarf, who'd once complained about delays, tipped generously. "This place feels alive," she said, her voice kind. Emma's eyes shone, her fear replaced by purpose. Malik approached, his tablet glowing with security updates. "All systems green," he said, his confidence a far cry from the guard who'd whispered his frustrations. James nodded, pride swelling. He thought of his mother, denied loans with polite smiles, and knew Emma and Malik were his legacies. Hard. The interview took place in the lobby, cameras framing the gleaming counters and vibrant signage. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa, leaned forward. "Why go undercover, Mr. Harper?" she asked, her tone probing. James's voice was steady, raw. "I grew up on the South Side, watching my mom face bank tellers who judged her before." She spoke. "I built Harper Financial to be different, but we were failing. I had to see why." Lisa scribbled, her eyes narrowing. "Some call it a stunt. Your response?" James's smile was resolute. "It's not about headlines. It's about Malik, Emma, every customer who deserves trust. We're proving it with training, policies, fairness." Asterisk. The interview aired that night. Clips spreading online. Harper's story resonating nationwide. Customers returned, some drawn by curiosity, others by trust. A man in a red coat, who'd boycotted after Catherine's reign, bought a bond and smiled. "Feels like a community," he told Malik, who nodded, his tablet steady. But Catherine's shadow lingered. Another post surfaced. Harper's fake. James hides the truth. Emma showed it to James, her jaw tight. "She's still fighting," she said, her voice low. James's eyes narrowed. "She's noise, Emma. Focus on the work." He meant it, but the post nagged him. Catherine's lies could stir trouble. Malik worked the entrance, his leadership evident as he guided a new guard. Margaret approached, her teacup empty. "You're doing well," she said, her voice kind. Malik smiled, his voice soft. "Means a lot, ma'am." James overheard, his chest warming. The bank was healing, its staff a family. Lauren, retrained, worked quietly, her lessons sinking in. Even elite banks' ads had vanished, their chain reeling as Harper's reputation soared. James joined Emma after the rush, the lobby quieting. "You're a leader now," he said, his tone warm. Emma's hands fidgeted. "I owe you everything," she said, her voice thick. James shook his head. "You owe yourself. Keep shining." He stepped outside, the neon sign glowing above. Sarah's article, Daniel's tweet, the interview, they were proof that justice echoed. Claire texted, interviews trending, customers sharing stories of fairness. Next, James's smile widened. Nationwide training. Let's inspire more. The city's lights stretched before him, a canvas of possibility. Catherine's jabs, elite. Mank's taunts, they were fading against Harper's truth. James thought of his mother, of Malik's kids, of Emma's courage. This wasn't just a bank, it was a movement. Harper Financial was rewriting its story, one transaction, one act, of trust at a time. The Chicago twilight bathed Harper Financial's flagship branch in a soft indigo glow. the neon sign casting a steady light across the bustling sidewalk, its hum a quiet anthem of renewal. Inside, the lobby pulsed with a gentle rush, the scent of fresh coffee from a kiosk weaving through the soft chime of the service bell and the murmur of customers. James Harper leaned against a polished counter, his casual sweater a subtle nod to the CEO who'd walked these floors undercover, exposing Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks' racial bias, ousting Catherine and promoting Malik Thompson to head of security. The bank gleamed with purpose-updated signage proclaiming trust for all, a feedback board brimming with notes like Harper feels like home. James's sharp eyes followed Malik, now mentoring a new guard with confidence, and Emma Johnson, reinstated teller, guiding a customer with warmth. Harper Financial was a beacon, and James was here to nurture its future. The bank's transformation had reshaped Chicago's financial landscape. Sarah's viral article, Daniel's social media advocacy, and James's televised interview had drawn crowds, their trust eclipsing elite banks' faltering discounts. Revenue soared, and the board, once skeptical, now hailed James's policies bias. Training, anonymous reporting, a diversity task force as industry standards. Margaret Evans sat at her corner table, her tea steaming, her gray hair catching the light. She'd shared Harper's story with her community college students, their discussions filling a nearby booth, their tips generous. "You've changed lives here," she told Emma, her voice rich with pride. Emma smiled, her confidence a testament to the bank's renewal. James approached Malik at the entrance, his tablet glowing with security updates. "You're a natural," he said, his tone warm. Malik grinned, his new role fitting like a second skin. "Course starts next month," he said, referring to the management training James funded. "Dreaming of running a branch someday?" James nodded, memories of his Southside Youth Bank tellers, dismissing his mother's dreams grounding him. "I'll mentor you myself," he said, leaning closer. "You've got the heart for it." Malik's throat tightened, his voice thick. "Why me?" James's tone was firm. "Because you saw the truth and stood up. That's leadership." Malik's dreams, once limited by bills and bias, now stretched toward a future Harper Financial would support. Emma joined them, her teller badge gleaming. "Training session went well," she said, her voice steady. "Staff's opening up about past issues." James smiled, pride swelling. "You're leading that charge, Emma. Ever thought about advocacy?" Emma blushed, her eyes bright. "Maybe. For now, I'm happy here." James's gaze was warm. "You're already making a difference." He thought of his mother, her lessons of dignity amid rejection, and knew Emma's courage was his vision's heart. Lauren, retrained and quieter, worked nearby, her lessons sinking in, a small but vital step. Margaret approached Malik, her teacup empty. "I told my students about you," she said, her voice kind. "They're studying your story resilience. Under pressure, you're an inspiration." Malik's cheeks flushed, his heart swelling. "Just doing my job, ma'am," he said, his voice soft. Margaret's smile was knowing. "And doing it well." The words landed deep, Malik's fear of failure fading. He glanced at James, his resolve hardening. He'd make them proud. James's phone buzzed. "Claire, board wants to scale training nationwide. Your mother sent an email." James opened it, her words simple but piercing. "You honored our struggles. Son, keep lifting others." He pinned the email to his office board, a reminder of his why. Lauren served a customer, her demeanor softer, her retraining reshaping her perspective. A man in a green jacket, who'd once complained about service, nodded approvingly. "This place has soul," he said, his voice gruff. Even elite banks' branches were closing, their chain crumbling as Harper's reputation soared. Emma led a staff meeting, the feedback board glowing behind her. "We're a team now," she said, her voice clear. Speak up, support each other. Malik added, the reporting channels live no one silenced anymore. Lauren nodded, her eyes down but attentive. James watched, his chest warm. The bank was a community, its heart beating strong. Margaret's students lingered, one snapping a photo of the feedback board, posting it online. Harper Financial proves fairness wins. Outside, James stood under the neon sign. The city's lights a canvas of possibility. Claire texted, mother's emails going viral, customers sharing their stories. Next, James's reply was firm. Mentorship program. Let's lift more Maliks. He thought of his mother, of Malik's kids, of Emma's courage. Harper wasn't just a bank, it was a movement. Catherine's threats had faded. Her lawyer's claims dismissed. Elite Bank's ads gone. Sarah's article, Daniel's posts. The interview, they were proof that justice resonated. The lobby glowed, a sanctuary of trust. Malik and Emma weren't just employees. They were proof that accountability worked. James Harper had fixed his corner of the world, not perfectly, but enough to spark hope, one transaction, one story at a time. Inside, the lobby buzzed with a gentle hum, the scent of fresh coffee from a kiosk mingling with the soft chime of the service bell and the chatter of early customers. James Harper stood near the feedback board, his casual sweater a testament to the CEO who'd gone undercover, exposed Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks' racial bias, and transformed the bank into a beacon of fairness. The space sparkled with renewal signage proclaiming equity always, a suggestion box overflowing, with notes like, Harper changed my trust in banks. James's sharp eyes followed Malik Thompson, now head of security, mentoring a new guard, and Emma Johnson, reinstated teller, leading a training session with poise. Harper Financial was a movement, and James was here to build its future. The bank's rebirth had shifted Chicago's financial landscape. Sarah's viral article, Daniel's social media advocacy, and James's televised interview had cemented Harper's reputation, drawing customers away from elite banks' shuttered branches. Revenue soared, and the board, once wary, now championed. James's policies, bias training, anonymous reporting, a diversity task force as a blueprint for the industry. Margaret Evans sat at her corner table, her tea steaming, her gray hair catching the light. She'd brought her community college students, their notebooks open, inspired by Harper's story of justice. You're shaping the next generation, she told Malik, her voice warm. Malik nodded, his confidence a far cry from the guard who'd whispered his frustrations. James approached Emma at the teller counter, her badge gleaming. You're a leader, he said, his tone warm. Emma smiled, her confidence radiant. I'm pitching a community outreach program, she said, her voice steady. Financial literacy for low-income families, like mine was. James nodded. Memories of his South Side childhood, his mother counting pennies for rent grounding him. I'll fund it, he said, leaning closer. You run it, Emma. Make it yours. Emma's eyes shone, her dream taking root. I won't let you down, she said, her voice thick. James's tone was firm. I know you won't. You're proof this works. Malik joined them, his tablet glowing with security updates. New guards are trained, he said, his ambition clear. I'm studying for that management course. Eyeing a branch lead role, James smiled, pride swelling. You're on your way, he said. I'll be your mentor every step. Malik's chest swelled, his kid's pride in his promotion fueling his drive. He thought of his daughter, who'd drawn a picture of him in a suit, captioned, My Hero. Harper wasn't just a job. It was a path to a future he'd once thought impossible. The bank hosted a community event that evening, a first under Emma's leadership. The lobby glowed with string lights, tables laden with financial planning guides, and a banner reading, Empowering Chicago. Malik spoke, his voice clear. I was stuck, thinking this place didn't see me, he said, his eyes meeting the crowd's. But someone believed in me. Now, I'm here to lift you up. Emma followed, her tone warm. Money shouldn't scare you. We're here to teach. To listen. A student from Margaret's class, a young woman named Asha, approached Emma, her eyes bright. I want to work here, she said, because of you. Emma's heart swelled. Her impact tangible. Margaret lingered, her tea cold. Her gaze on Malik. You're a role model, she told him, her words a quiet anchor. Malik nodded, his resolve firm. A former teller, silenced by Catherine, had returned, now thriving under Emma's mentorship, her reinstatement a symbol of reconciliation. Sarah posted about the event online. Harper Financial's community. Night shows banking can be human. This is the future. Comments poured in. Sign me up. And Harper's leading the way. Cementing the bank's new legacy. James's phone buzzed Claire. Events trending. Boards pushing for a scholarship program. James smiled, replying, green-lighted. Name it after my mother. He thought of her email, pinned to his board. You honored our struggles. Lauren worked quietly, her retraining reshaping her perspective, a small but vital change. A customer in a brown coat, who'd once left a Leap Bank, opened an account, nodding at Malik. This feels right, he said, his voice firm. The event ended, the lobby quieting, but its energy lingered. Aisha lingered, her notebook filled with Emma's advice, her dream of banking alive. James stood under the neon sign, the city's lights a tapestry of possibility. Claire texted, social media's 90% positive. Aisha's post about Emma's going viral. Next, James's reply was resolute. Expand outreach. Let's empower more SS. He thought of Malik's daughter, Emma's courage, his mother's lessons. Harper Financial was a legacy of trust, built on accountability and hope. The Chicago night enveloped Harper Financial's flagship branch in a velvet glow, the neon sign casting a radiant light across the bustling sidewalk, its hum a steadfast anthem of trust. Inside, the lobby shimmered with life, the scent of fresh coffee from a kiosk mingling with the soft chime of the service bell and the laughter of customers. James Harper stood near the feedback board, his casual sweater a quiet echo of the CEO who'd walked these floors undercover, exposing Catherine Wells and Lauren Brooks' racial bias, ousting Catherine and promoting Malik Thompson to head of security. The bank pulsed with purpose signage proclaiming equity always, a suggestion box brimming with notes like Harper restored my faith. James's sharp eyes traced Malik, now leading a security team with authority, and Emma Johnson, reinstated teller, guiding a community workshop with poise. Harper Financial wasn't just a bank, it was a legacy, forged in courage and accountability. The transformation had reshaped the industry. Sarah's viral article, Daniel's social media crusade, and James's televised interview had made Harper a model. Its policies, bias training, anonymous reporting, a diversity task force adopted by rival chains. Elite Bank, once a taunting competitor, had closed its La Chicago branch, its discounts no match for Harper's heart. Revenue soared, and the board, once skeptical, now championed James's vision, scaling it nationwide. Margaret Evans lingered. At her corner table, her tea steaming, her gray hair catching the light. She brought her students, their notebooks filled with Harper's story, their presence a testament to its reach. You've built a movement, she told James, her voice rich with pride. James approached Emma, her teller badge gleaming. Your workshop was a hit, he said, his tone warm. Emma smiled, her confidence radiant. Families are signing up for literacy classes, she said. It's changing lives. James nodded, memories of his South Side childhood, his mother's struggles with bank rejections, grounding him. You're the heart of this, he said. Keep pushing. Emma's eyes shone, her outreach program a beacon for Chicago's underserved. Aisha, Margaret's student, worked nearby, her new teller role inspired by Emma's courage. A dream of banking alive. Malik joined them, his tablet glowing with security updates. "Scholarship programs live," he said, referring to the fund named for James's mother. "My daughter's applying. She wants to study finance." James smiled, pride swelling. "She have every chance," he said. "You're building her future." Malik's chest swelled, his management course underway, his sights set on a branch lead role. Lauren, fully retrained, worked quietly. Her perspective shifted, a small but vital change. A customer in a blue coat, once an elite bank client, opened an account, nodding at Malik. "This feels like trust," he said, his voice firm. At a national banking conference, James stood before a packed auditorium, his voice resonant. "Harper failed its people," he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd of executives. "We ignored bias, let it fester. But we listened, acted, rebuilt. Fairness isn't a cost, it's our foundation." The room erupted in applause. Competitors taking notes, inspired to audit their own systems. A young manager approached James after, her voice eager. "Your story changed how I lead," she said. James's smile echoed his mother's lessons of dignity. "Start with trust," he told her. "It's everything." Back at Harper, Malik trained Aisha, his voice clear. "Every customer deserves respect," he said, his leadership natural. Aisha nodded, her notebook filled with Emma's advice. Margaret's students lingered, one posting online. "Harper Financial's story is justice in action." Claire, James's assistant, had emailed, "You gave us hope," echoing James's mother. James kept it pinned, a reminder of his mission. James stood under the neon sign, the city's lights, a canvas of dreams. Claire texted, "Conference speech trending. Industry shifting. What's next?" James's reply was firm. "Expand scholarships. Lift more Aishas." The bank was a movement, its policies a blueprint for change. Emma's workshops, Malik's leadership, Aisha's ambition, they were Harper's legacy. Proof that accountability could triumph. The lobby glowed, a sanctuary of trust. James Harper had rebuilt his corner of the world, not perfectly, but enough to inspire. The neon sign hummed, its light a promise kept for every customer, every story that mattered. James Harper's story is a powerful ode to empathy, a reminder that leadership thrives on compassion and accountability. At its core, it champions humanistic values. Every person deserves dignity, every injustice demands action, and every system can evolve through courage. James's undercover mission exposing bias, uplifting Malik and Emma, rebuilding Harper Financial shows that fairness is a choice, forged in resolve and trust. His actions echo a truth. Institutions aren't just profit machines. They're communities where empathy transforms lives. The lessons are universal. First, empathy fuels justice. James's past drove his fight for change. Second, leadership lifts others. Mentoring Malik and Emma built a stronger future. Third, every voice matters. Margaret's testimony, Sarah's reporting, Daniel's advocacy shaped Harper's rebirth. Finally, accountability redeems. Malik's promotion and Lauren's retraining prove growth is possible. This story challenges us. How do you confront bias in your world? Share your experiences below. Have you ever stood up for fairness? Your story could spark change. If Harper's journey inspired you, join Legacy Stories for more tales of justice, resilience, and humanity. Subscribe, hit the bell, and become part of a community celebrating the legacies that shape us. Thank you for reading, and we'll see you in the next story.